Hi everyone, today I'm going to show you how to create a production-ready remix deployment on Cloudflare Workers using GitLab. This means we're creating a remix application that automatically deploys to Cloudflare whenever you're doing a push to master. Let's get started. Today, first, we're going to create a remix application from scratch. Remix provides an amazing scaffolding for that. And if you have an existing remix project, personally, I find it easier to move the routes and components into the scaffold rather than the other way around. All right, here we go. First, we're going to execute the following command. npx create remix, and we're using the latest version, and we're going to give this an application name. Let's say GitLab remix Cloudflare. I don't know, nothing special, but here we go. Yes, that sounds good. All right. We're going to select just the basics because we're going to configure this ourselves. So now we have this whole list of options, and here's Cloudflare Workers. Make sure to select that. This is really important. Select whether you want TypeScript or JavaScript. That's up to you. And yes, we'd like to run npm install now. All right, that looks great. Let's go in there. And have a look. So here's our application. Looking great. All right, let's do an initial commit. First, initialize the Git repository with git init. Then let's add all the new files. And do the initial commit. All right. Now we have a local Git project. Let's create the remote repository. So here's GitLab. Open your GitLab and click new project repository. Select create blank project. All right, here we give it the same name. I don't know, GL remix Cloudflare. I could be more creative with that, but never mind. All right, I'm gonna put this under my own user. And as a deployment target, select edge computing. This is basically for our internal tracking, but we're going to add a bit more functionality behind this later. All right, visibility level, choose whichever you prefer. This doesn't affect whether your site's public at the end. But do remove this button, initialize repository with a README, because we already have an initialized repository. If we let GitLab initialize it, we're having two diverging histories, and that's going to be a pain to resolve. All right, let's create project. All right, here we go. Now let's take the URL and add this to the local repository. Git remote add origin and that URL. And let's do a first push. All right. And if we reload this page, we see all the code that we just created there. Perfect. All right. Now, the next step is to actually set up your Cloudflare account to allow those deployments from within GitLab. I've created a brand new Cloudflare account here. Doesn't have any websites. So go ahead, create your Cloudflare account now, and I guide you through the rest. This should look fairly similar if you have an existing Cloudflare account. So just skip the steps that don't need any setup for now. All right, the first thing we need to do is to subscribe to a Workers plan. So we're going here on the left-hand side to the Workers entry. And we need to first set up a free custom Cloudflare Workers subdomain. This is generated from the account name. Yeah, that's fine for me for now. So I'm going to click this. And we need to select a plan. I think the free plan is good for now. Just check whatever your needs are. Continue with free. All right, there you go. We have now Workers. We're going to create a service automatically, so skip this for now. But what we need to do is we need to obtain an API token. So you can either go here via API tokens, or from anywhere within the site, we can go to My Profile, and then here, API tokens. All right, in here, we're going to create a new token. Click on Create Token. They provide us with a few templates, which is great, and we obviously want to be able to edit Cloudflare Workers, so we're going to use this template. So the permissions are already perfectly configured for us by that template. We now have to select the account and zone resources. So as account resource, obviously select your account that you're working with. And then as zone resources, so the best thing to do is to be as specific as possible. So if you have a domain set up, you can select specific zone, and you can select that website or that zone in here. I haven't set up the website yet, so I need to be a bit more general. But be aware that this API token can now be used to deploy to any zone within the GitLab Jamstack Incubation Cloudflare account. So as you add more zones later to your account, this token can be used again, and this might not actually be what you want. So I recommend being as specific as possible in this case. All right, let's continue to summary. You can review what you've just set, and this should be fine for me. And if I click Create Token, it will provide me with this token. You need to copy it right now because they won't ever show it to you again. But to be safe, we want to add it to the GitLab project immediately, and then it's saved. All right, go back to GitLab, and I'm still inside my project. Now I can go to Settings, CI/CD, and in here we have the entry variables, and that is what we want to save the API token as. So click on Expand. We have no variables yet, obviously, so we're going to add a new variable. We're going to put the value here, and up here we're going to call this a Cloudflare API token. Make sure you use exactly this string, because this will be used by Wrangler, which is the Cloudflare CLI that is going to run on the runner. So it's important that it's called exactly that. We want to not only protect the variable, because it's obviously a secret key, we also want to mask it. You can limit this to a specific environment. For now, we only have one environment. All right, click Add Variable, and we have the variable in there. Now, GitLab knows our API token, and it knows the source code. What's missing is a GitLab CI YAML file. This is basically an instruction to GitLab to do something with that code whenever you're doing a push to the project. So we're building this pipeline now. So we're going back to the project. Let's close this for now. And what we're going to do is create a new file called .gitlab ci.yaml. GitLab will read this and follow the instructions provided in here. I'm going to build a very minimal pipeline, but you can extend this indefinitely. But for now, we're going to work with a single deploy stage. So this is optional, but I think it's important to start that from the beginning. We're going to start with stages. This is basically a list of stages that your pipeline is going through. We only have a single stage for now, and it's called deploy. And here's the job description. We're going to call it deploy worker. This is basically the job that is being executed with its name. And here's the instruction. First, we're going to specify an image that is going to be used. That's a Docker image. And because we're using npm and npx for that, I'd recommend just using the node long-term support image. All right, here we go. We're going to assign this job to a stage. And this is basically the same name as defined here. So it needs to be one of this list. We're now using environment and calling this production. And this is the environment that I referred to earlier in the variables screen, right? So you can limit a certain variable to be available only in a specific environment. All right, so we're going to run a little before script. This is basically the first script that is being executed before the main script runs. And this is a list of shell commands. And let's use npm ci. This is basically an npm install that makes sure that it uses the package log file rather than the package JSON. So you can be sure that it uses those dependencies that you've actually developed with locally. But you could still use npm install if you don't care about that. All right, now let's go for the main script. So here goes the script, and another list of shell commands. And in here, we can just run npm run deploy. So this is going to run this command from the package JSON. This came with the scaffolding from Remix. So it's going to execute a command called Wrangler publish. Wrangler is the Cloudflare CLI tool that basically uses the environment variables to detect what account you're using, and uses this Wrangler toml to identify what it's going to do, and then publishes this to Cloudflare using the Cloudflare API. So we can abstract this in here by just using npm run deploy, and then whenever you make a change to this command, it will pick that up immediately. Again, you could run npx wrangler publish as well. That would be allowed. Right. Next step. I want to add some rules. This GitLab CI YAML is evaluated every single time you push to any branch whatsoever in your project. We need to make sure that it only runs this deploy job whenever you're pushing to main or master. So we want to put a safeguard in here and say if CI commit underscore ref name. So this is a variable that contains the name of the branch that you just committed to. And we're going to compare this with CI underscore default branch. And this is basically the name of your default branch of the project, be it main or master or whatever you're using. So this rule makes sure we're going to execute this worker job only after any push to main. All right, and this is basically all there is to it. Now we have the GitLab CI YAML file, and we can just add that to the commit. Okay, let me clear this. And let's go git add and add a commit message. And now let's do a git push. And this will immediately execute this pipeline. So let's go back to GitLab. And go to CI/CD. And as you can see here, this pipeline is now running. In here, you see the name of the stage and the name of the job that is running. So let's watch this. So this is done. And in here, you actually see the URL that Cloudflare has assigned to your worker for now. This consists of workers.dev, your account name as the subdomain, and your application name as the subdomain. You can actually change this application name inside the Wrangler toml, and this is the URL. When you click on it initially, it may not already be there yet because on the initial deployment, Cloudflare has to set up this URL. So you can go to the Cloudflare dashboard to monitor, go to workers, and now we have this new worker service here. So we can click on this and see an overview. And if we go to routes, we should be able to see here it's still initializing. So we have to wait until this is done. After a while, this one switches to enabled, which means we can now finally click this. And here's our Remix app. Isn't that amazing? We did that. It's a shit app, but there it is. You get the general gist, right? Okay, now the amazing thing is this is set up to auto deploy from any pushes to master or main, sorry. So let me demonstrate that real quickly. I'm going to go into the application, routes, index, and let me just switch up something. All right, there you go. And let me commit that. All right, and if I go into CI/CD, we'll see the pipeline is running again. We can wait for that. We don't have to go in there, but I like to monitor what's happening. But you can just ignore this and just be confident that the deployment works on its own. Okay, let's wait again. All right, now it's done. And we can reload this page. Ta-da! All right, where to go from here? Next step is I'm going to demonstrate you how to create a custom domain with that. This is assuming that you already registered a domain somewhere else. I'm not going to demonstrate you how to do that. Say we already have one. I can click on Add Site, and I'm gonna use a random one, and Cloudflare is going to complain about it, but let's say I have my-remix site, okay, .com, I don't know. Let's say this is my domain. I can click Add Site. I will have to select a plan, and I'm going to be happy with free for now. And obviously the DNS records are going to fail now. So I'm going to skip this step. You obviously would want to add a record or do that same thing in your DNS registrar. Yeah, of course, I'm going to accept that. All right, but I have set up the domain now. As you can see now, this is the main dashboard, and I now have this my remix site entry in here. Now we have a site-specific dashboard. So the one thing that's still missing is setting up workers routes. This is inside the sites dashboard. In the sidebar, you choose workers routes. And we currently don't have any routes configured. So we have to do that. I can now click Add Route. And this is basically a pattern. So I can redirect any request with that route is going to be redirected to my worker. I want, I don't know, my remixsite.com /star. This means all the requests to that URL with any route are going to be redirected to this service. And I'm going to select the GL Remix Cloudflare worker that we set up earlier. We could, at this stage, also redirect all subdomain requests to this, which is important if you maybe want the www domain there as well. But for now, I just want the top level domain to be redirected to that router. I want the environment production because I only have that right now. And I can click Save. And that means that now I could use this domain to open my Remix application. Again, caveat, I haven't actually set up this domain, but this is how you would do that. All right, and one thing else to get your Remix application production ready. And this is more to do with the GitLab pipeline. So let me open the project back up. So this GitLab CI YAML file is obviously a pipeline description. And this is a pretty minimal pipeline that just does a deployment. So we could add, for example, a test stage in here. And in that test stage, we could have a test job. Oops. And it would probably look pretty similar. Image node. Oops. Long-term support stage test. Any environment, so I'm not going to specify that. Again, in the test, we need to have the before script. And then as the script, we're going to run npm run test. That is obviously if you have a test script in here. But I'm going to post a link to the documentation because I can't possibly give you all the different ways of how to set up a beautiful pipeline. And I think there's people at GitLab that can talk a lot better than I about this. But this is how you would superpower your Remix application deployment and how to get it production ready really, really fast. For now, I'm going to stop here. I really hope you enjoyed this little tutorial. If you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm going to put my contact details below, and I'm here for any help. I'm also in the Remix Discord, so if whenever you mention GitLab, it's probably pinging me. So let me know if you have any questions, and I'm here to help. I think this is a really great setup. I hope to see a lot of deployments like this on GitLab.